Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is NURHIDAYAH binti Muhammad YASIN.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. Good day to our lecturer, Professor Dr. Hani, and our fellow friends. So today I want to introduce myself. My name is SOLEHA binti ZAILAN.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. My name is AMIRUL AIZUDDIN bin Ali and my course ID is 2017794317.
Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to our lecturer, Professor Dr. HALIMAHTON binti BORHAN. Before that, my name is MUHAMAD YAZRIL HAFIZ bin YAAKUP. Today, our group, we will present our research project paper on the topic Factor Affecting Inflation in Malaysia. Okay, for the first slide, for introduction, the outline of the research study is given in chapter 1. It starts with the study's context and a declaration on the issue. Next, the analysis also identify the research objective and the question. The significance of the study is also included in chapter 1. Finally, this chapter will briefly outline the remaining chapter of the study. It is evident from the research that the government should implement appropriate monetary and fiscal policy to influence this macroeconomic determinant in order to control and reduce the risk of inflation. So we go through to the second slide. The unemployment rate and inflation rate are two of the most important indicators of economic health. Inflation is one of the central trends in a macroeconomic. Inflation is an upward market trend of the general price. Inflation happens when most price of goods and services in the economy increase for a several time, which is the average. The overall price level continue to increase. We can see that the coronavirus disease is now caused by Malaysia COVID-19. The adverse effect of this pandemic are external causes, global supply and demand shock, and national factor for Malaysian economy. This will show the imbalance and impact smaller business and people with a lower income. Every government should monitor this indicator closely. Moreover, most society nowadays are committed and responsible to policies designed to keep them to a reasonably low level. This goal certainty seems sensible since high rates of unemployment cause enormous economic wastage and social hardship, and serious inflation causes redistribution of income and major economic inefficiency.
Now, I will explain about the problem statement of inflation. Based on our research, we have 5 factors affecting of inflation, which are exchange rate, unemployment, money supply, consumer price index, and oil price. The first factor is exchange rate. On 29 September 2015, the Malaysia ringgit peaked at 4.46 Malaysia ringgit per USD. The ringgit had weakened 6.3% from 28 August 2015 and 36.0% from the corresponding day last year. The ringgit has declined 27.5% against the USD since the start of the year. Since 29 September 2015, however, the currency has increased 6.2% on the back government-led intervention in the stock market and a temporary rally in oil price. The second factor of inflation is unemployment. The problem statement is, over the last decade, the youth unemployment level has risen to the national average. In previous recessions, youth were more seriously losing jobs than normal, and after recessions, starting from 1985 until 2009, unemployment was rising. If unemployment rate increase, then the inflation rate will decrease. If the unemployment rates decrease, then the inflation rate will increase. The third factor of affecting of inflation is money supply. Increase the money supply faster than the growth in real output will cause inflation. The reason is that there is more money chasing the same number of goods. Therefore, the increase in monetary demand causes firms to put up prices. The increase in the money supply ensured by an equal increase in nominal output or gross domestic product (GDP). The increase in the money supply will lead to an increase in consumer spending. Increased money supply causes reduction in interest rate and further spending, and therefore an increase in aggregate demand. The next problem statement is Consumer Price Index. According to the Department of Statistics, the Consumer Price Index decreased by 1.4% to 120.6 in December 2020, compared to 122.3 in the same month of the previous year. The decline in the overall index was due to the decrease in transport, which is -8.4%, accommodation, utility, gas and other fuels, which is -3.3%, clothing and footwear, which is -0.4%, restaurants and hotels, which is -0.2%, and furnishing and home, which is -0.2%. As the consumer price index rise, it means that consumer price increase as well, and when it falls, it means that consumer price also decrease. The last problem statement is oil price. Oil price increase are generally to increase inflation and reduce economic growth. In terms of inflation, oil price directly affect the price of goods made with petroleum products. Increase in oil prices can depress the supply of other goods because they increase the cost of producing them. In the short run, only oil crude price affected the inflation, so the oil crude price can give an effect on inflation. If the rate of oil crude price change, the inflation also change. This finding will contribute to Malaysian government in making policy to control the petrol price to avoid from the inflation. As conclusion,
the research question, this research project is set to answer some research questions. First, is there any significant relationship between exchange rate, unemployment, money supply, consumer price, and oil price with inflation in Malaysia? Second, which factors affect the most towards inflation in Malaysia? This question can be answered in the findings. Now we will go to the research objective and research questions. For the research objective, the general objective for this research is to investigate the significant relationship between the factors affecting inflation in Malaysia. There are two specific objectives for this research. The first is to identify the significant relationship between exchange rate, unemployment, money supply, consumer price, and oil price in Malaysia. Second, to examine the significant impact of inflation in Malaysia. Next,
let's go to the next presentation. I will present about literature review. On this title that I will pick have 1 DV and 5 IV. A DV is inflation in Malaysia and 5 IV, which are: first one is exchange rate, the second one is money supply, the third one is unemployment rate, and fourth, oil price, and the last, consumer price index. First, I will present to you about the DV is inflation in Malaysia. Inflation is defined as an increase in the average price level of products and services in an economy over time. On the other hand, inflation can be said as sustained rise in the general price, which can cause negative impacts on the economic growth of a country itself. In achieving economic growth and development, human capital plays an important role by Islam et al. By 2016. The first one I will tell you about first IV is Consumer Price Index as CPI. CPI highlights annual time series data in Germany using the ARMA technique for annual time series data from 1960 to 2017. The Consumer Price Index can be called a description of the frequency analysis statistics for relative price by Karima et al. 2015. The second one is oil price. We pick 5 journals on the oil price for the different 5 journals. The first journal, based on this study, the effect of the oil price to inflation positively significant, but in a long-term relationship by Seok Hun Seka 2015. The second journal is from the study of the effect of oil price economics on Vietnam show that significantly higher oil price will lead to higher inflation and the deterioration in budget by Nguyen T. Ngoc Trang 2017. The third one, the adverse relationship is thus more noticeable than the significant relationship, which can affect a wider range of products and services and be apparent over long duration by the Zhivkov 2019. The result in this study reveals a positively significant long-term relationship between the variable causal test Granger confirms that change of in oil price affect Turkey industrial production as a net oil importer country by Korhan Gokmenoglu 2015. And the last one, it aims analyzing the role on inflation of short-term and long-term. Oil Price Fluctuation by Umabala 2018. The third IV I will tell you is about unemployment rate. Unemployment rate that we pick five journal. The first journal, unemployment has a positive and substantial effect on inflation in the long term by Blanket 2016. This study has found a positive relationship between unemployment and inflation to enable Nigerian countries to look into the reduction in employment and commodity price and inflation for the inclusive economy by Badiru and Abdullahi 2016. The third general, the findings of the analysis indicate that inflation and unemployment impact short-term and long-term effects both negatively and significantly. Negative 0.764 and negative 0.0431 by Mehnush and Fezullah 2016. Next, the empirical findings we achieve indicate that both the government size and inflation are positive by Afonso 2016. And the last journal that we pick is the result therefore shows that the short-term and long-term negative ties between inflation and unemployment in Nigeria economy by Adebowale 2015. The fourth IV is money supply. A genre that we pick for money supply which are Mariam Jamila Hashim 2014. The second one is Rabiul Islam 2017. The third one is S.K. Chowdhury 2018. The fourth one is Theo Edward 2016. Generally, on the channel that I will pick on the money supply, a positive ties exists between inflation and money growth. The journal that I tools use are that these two tools rely on their relationship with supply of money and the provision of money. The last one, the IV on this title is exchange rate. A journal that I will pick for exchange rate which are Ferrero and Seneca 2015. A central bank with a CPI stabilization mandate will increase interest rate to limit the inflationary effect of depreciation on the exchange rate.
Okay, let's go to the research method. Research method have a three type, which is for the first, research design, second, theoretical framework, and third, data analysis. For the research design, the essential method for conducting the study are quantitative approach. Researcher decided to use quantitative analysis in this study. Quantitative approach allows numerical data to be collected in aims to discuss those problems. For the theoretical framework, the origin of inflation can be believed to include quantitative money theory, demand-driven inflation, cost-based inflation, monetary inflation theory, system inflation theory, and other contemporary inflation theories. However, the deterioration of inflation needs more complex treatment in this element, with analysis that reveals sophisticated dynamic interaction between above the theory. For the data analysis is viewed as a process in which data are cleaned, transformed, and formatted to find useful information for decision. The aims of the process is to extract useful data and to make decisions on the basis of the collection of the data. They have a seek data to process data which is normality test, descriptive statistic, autocorrelation, Ramsey reset test, heteroscedasticity test, and multicollinearity. Okay, for the normality test, the most commonly used to test the data which are Kolmogorov, Smirnov test, and the Shapiro-Wilk test. There are many recent applications of research are developed based on the assumption of multivariate normality. If the test is significant, the distribution is non-normal, but if the null hypothesis means the sample of distribution is normal. Second is descriptive statistic. Descriptive statistics are a collection of a rapid descriptive coefficient summarizing a set of records, both of which may be an example of the whole population or a sample. The variables used to outline the data collection are measurement of variability or dispersion of central tendency. It as the minimum maximum value of the data running. Autocorrelation is a function of data that reflect the extent of resemblance over various interval time between the values of the same variable or single variable. Autocorrelation can occur between position and speed, and data on the person can be autocorrelated in both. For the Ramsey reset test, the reset test from Ramsey is a general test of the model of linear regression. In particular, it checks out whether non-linear combination of the value equipped help to clarify the response variable. The Ramsey reset test is based on the same concept but runs the regression, which is yi equal to xib plus zit plus ui, where zi equal to y2, y3, and y4. The predicted y value is normalized between 0 and 1 before the power is calculated. If the regression is properly specified, the coefficient for all the powers of the predicted y should be insignificant. A heteroscedasticity test is carried out by researchers to determine constant variation in inconsistency. In this model, researchers use arch to classify problem of heteroscedasticity. Heteroscedasticity is the lack of homoscedasticity. Economically speaking, if the mean value is higher than 0.05, heteroscedasticity can be found. If the mean value is less than 0.05, heteroscedasticity occurs. For the multicollinearity calculated by the model inflation variant, which is VIF. It indicates that the collinearities between both the variables is so great when the VIF value reach 10. Conversely, if the collinearity value is less than 10, then a low collinearity can be set. In order to test multicollinearity, the association between the predictor factors should be known. The findings are demonstrated as a single R and a variable inflation factor VIF. The multicollinearity of R squared and VIF value for each factor is effected.
Next, for the findings, we will start with exchange rate. The exchange rate is negatively affecting inflation in Malaysia because the exchange rate volatility gives negative pressure on the inflationary rate. Even though the volatile exchange rate increase the risk, they also create profit opportunities for the funds and investors. So there is no significant relationship. Next, for the unemployment. For the long-term partnership, unemployment gives a negative effect on Malaysia's inflation rate. The theoretical structure of positive relationship has a reverse significance. However, the previous studies can support our findings of substantial negative relationship. So for the unemployment, there is also no significant relationship between inflation with the unemployment. derivative for the money supply. This research shows that the money supply has a positive ties to the inflation of Malaysia. An increase of 1% in cash supplies would have inflationary effect on Malaysia. Increasing the money supply faster than the growth in real output will cause inflation. The reason is that there is more money chasing the same number of goods. Therefore, the increase in monetary demand causes firms to put up the price. Fourth, for the consumer price, it gives a negatively affecting inflation in Malaysia. In the long run relationship, the CPI is also negatively affecting inflation in Malaysia. An increase of 1% of gross domestic product will be affect the CPI to decrease below than 1%. Lastly, for the oil price, for the long-term relationship between changes to the oil price and in inflation in CPI, and changes to the oil price have major impacts on domestic inflation determination. The higher oil price contribute to higher production costs of exporters. More costs of production will then be moved to the domestic price level, and the domestic inflation rises indirectly. So, this will answer the first research question, which is any significant relationship between exchange rate, unemployment rate, money supply, consumer price and oil price with inflation in Malaysia. So, as we can see, only money supply and oil price give a significant relationship with the inflation in Malaysia. To answer the second question, which factors affect the most with inflation in Malaysia, the answer is the oil price. Oil price gives the most effect towards inflation in Malaysia because the changes of oil price can contribute to the inflation in Malaysia.
We found that inflation is a major economic issue for most countries that can badly influence economic growth in Malaysia. Based on our analysis, the exchange rate, money supply, unemployment, and consumer price are significant with inflation in Malaysia. But oil price can be against is not significant inflation in Malaysia. The result was shown in the test and approved research paper in recent year. Hope the government and BNM control inflation in Malaysia so that the incident in 1992 will not happen again. If the government or BNM can control inflation, this will indirectly reduce the country's unemployment rate and will increase the country's economic sector. That's all for today. We hope that our research can give advantage to all of you. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Born on the wrong side of the ocean, with all the tides against you. You never thought you'd be much good for anyone, but that's so far from the truth. I know there's pain in your heart, and you're covered in scars. Wish you could see